Just a lot of people seem to be against themselves. And I think about there's enough people and circumstances in life against us already. Don't be against yourself.
I am blessed. I am favored. I am walking into my destiny. This is Pastor Joel Osteen's daily mantra. And honestly, it's undeniably powerful. But when you flip the camera around, the picture blurs completely.
Sometimes it's just been so natural to us, we don't realize that we're, maybe a strong way to say it is we're cursing our future.
From a $10 million mansion framed against Houston's skyline, to a plumber discovering $600,000 in envelopes behind a bathroom wall, and a federal loan scandal during the pandemic, this man has found himself in the middle of some really sketchy situations that just don't add up. For nearly 2 decades, Pastor Joel Osteen has preached the promise of limitless abundance. Millions have echoed his famous, uplifting words every Sunday morning, non-stop. Yet critics insist the echo is starting to crack. Why does America's most cheerful preacher funnel barely a sliver of his $90 million budget into charity? Why did Lakewood's doors stay shut when Hurricane Harvey's waters rose just outside? And if prosperity is proof of faith, what does it say when Gen Zs are quietly walking away? Tonight, we'll travel from a dusty feed store in 1959 to the famous basketball arena, reborn as a megachurch. We will be unwrapping every miracle, every mystery, and every accusation in between. Because when the spotlight shines this bright, every hidden corner eventually comes into view.
Lord, grant me the strength that I may not fall into the clutches of cholesterol. Beelzebub is a chocolate drop. Lucifer is a lollipop. Teach me the evils of fried chicken from the South.
Every week, somewhere between 40,000 and 45,000 people walk through the doors of what used to be the home of the Houston Rockets. But they're not there to watch a basketball game. They're there to hear one man speak.
But you have to come back to this truth that God is your doorkeeper. No person can shut what God wants open.
Lakewood Church isn't your average church. It's a high-production, lights-down, cameras-on experience where the lobby has more in common with a mega mall than a ministry. There's a gift shop the size of a small grocery store, massive screens hanging from every corner of the sanctuary, and a perfectly timed countdown before Joel Osteen steps out, Bible in hand, and greets the crowd with a smile that hasn't changed in 20 years.
This is my Bible. I am what it says I am. I have what it says I have. I can do what it says I can do.
With a reported annual budget of $90 million, Lakewood runs more like a corporation than a community church. Its sermons are broadcast to over 100 countries via TV, radio, and social media, reaching millions every week. But the numbers don't stop there. Joel Osteen Ministries brings in tens of millions annually from book sales, merchandise, and ticketed events. And yet, according to recent charity watchdogs, only about 1.3% of that revenue is spent on actual missions and outreach. And to make matters worse, organizations like Give.org now say Joel Osteen's ministry refuses to disclose how their funds are allocated, fueling even more speculation that behind the stage lights and uplifting music, the shiniest house on the block might be hiding more shadows than most are willing to admit. Now, before the lights, the book deals, and the mansion with 6 bedrooms and 0 guilt, Joel Osteen was just the quiet kid behind the camera. Born on March 5, 1963, in Houston, Texas, Joel was one of 6 children in a family that revolved around church. His father, John Osteen, was a former Southern Baptist turned charismatic preacher who founded Lakewood Church in 1959, starting with just 234 seats inside a converted feed store.
You know, we're not Hollywood, we're the church of the living God.
Joel didn't grow up dreaming of the stage. While his siblings were teaching and preaching, he was more comfortable behind the scenes, editing video, adjusting lighting, and producing his father's televised sermons. After a short stint at Oral Roberts University, which he left after less than a year, Joel returned home to help build the church's TV ministry. He was only 19, but already thinking like a brand manager. For 17 years, he ran Lakewood's production with the precision of a Hollywood director. He chose his father's suits, edited out every awkward pause, and polished each broadcast until it gleamed. He had no formal training in theology, no seminary degree, and zero desire to preach. Every time his father asked him to take the stage, Joel politely declined. "You're the preacher. I'll make you look good." But everything changed on January 17, 1999. Joel finally said yes to preaching, just once, to fill in for his dad. Unfortunately, it turned out to be the last sermon John Osteen ever heard. He died 6 days later from a sudden heart attack. And just like that, the man who had spent nearly 2 decades avoiding the spotlight suddenly found himself leading one of the largest churches in the country with no experience, no credentials, and an audience full of skeptics. But what Joel lacked in theology, he made up for in one thing. He knew how to keep people watching.
He's not just a God who closes doors, He's a God who opens doors that you couldn't open.
In the early 2000s, Lakewood Church was already growing fast, but Joel Osteen had something even bigger in mind. At the time, weekly attendance was hovering around 8,000, which was impressive, no doubt, but not enough for someone whose vision had always been larger than life. Joel wasn't just trying to fill pews, he wanted to transform worship into an experience. So in 2003, he made a move that stunned both churchgoers and the city of Houston. He struck a 30-year lease deal with the city to take over the legendary Compaq Center, former home of the NBA's Houston Rockets. This wasn't a chapel, it was a 16,000-seat sports arena, and Joel was about to turn it into a sanctuary. Now, you're probably wondering, what was the cost of such a staggering move? And how was a church with less than 10,000 members at the time able to afford it? Well, for starters, the lease alone cost around $12 million, with an option to extend another 30 years for $22 million more. But that was only the beginning. Lakewood committed nearly $95 million in renovations, which would be about $158 million in today's dollars. They stripped the arena to its bones and rebuilt it with 5 new interior floors, massive waterfalls, state-of-the-art production studios, classrooms, children's areas, and enough carpet to run laps on. 15 months later, in July 2005, Lakewood Church officially reopened, and every single seat was filled. Over 16,000 people packed into the building that once hosted playoff buzzer beaters to hear Joel Osteen preach about blessings, favor, and new beginnings. And for many in Houston, it was exactly that, a new era of faith, entertainment, and hope.
God will shut doors to protect you. He'll move someone out of your life because He knows they're not going to be good for you.
But for others, especially those watching from the outside, it marked something else entirely. To them, it was the moment Lakewood stopped being a church and started becoming something much harder to define, something bigger, and something far more complicated. One of the most interesting things about Joel Osteen is he doesn't shout. He doesn't slam Bibles on podiums or preach fire and brimstone. He smiles, speaks softly, and tells you God wants you to have a nice house, a good job, and a life of favor. His message is simple: speak good things, and good things will come. I am blessed. I am successful. I am healed. It's a message millions have embraced, but it's also one that critics say isn't just watered-down Christianity. It's something else entirely. Joel's core philosophy, often called the prosperity gospel, didn't start with Lakewood or even his father. It traces back to the New Thought movement of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This spiritual school taught that the mind has the power to shape reality, and that positive thinking can manifest health, wealth, and success. It later inspired self-help titans like Napoleon Hill and Norman Vincent Peale, and eventually filtered into charismatic Christianity. What Joel preaches every Sunday isn't a mistake or a misinterpretation. It's a designed hybrid, motivational coaching with a Christian shell. He quotes scripture, yes, but more often he quotes you. His focus is on transformation through thought, not necessarily salvation through repentance. That's exactly why scholars like Kate Bowler, author of Blessed, argue that the prosperity gospel falls apart in real life. What happens when the healing doesn't come, she asks? When the money runs out? Critics call it cotton candy theology, sweet, colorful, and empty. It tastes good going down, but there's nothing to hold on to when life falls apart. And in a world full of grief, debt, depression, and uncertainty, many are starting to wonder if Joel's gospel really has the weight to carry them through, or if it was only ever designed to shine from a stage. Now, you have to admit that while Joel Osteen may be a pastor, he's also an incredible entrepreneur and one of the most successful in modern American religion. While his sermons preach abundance, his career produces it in very real, very measurable ways. It all started with a book. In 2004, Joel released Your Best Life Now. Many expected a mild success, maybe a decent run in Christian bookstores, but by the end of its first year, the book had sold over 1 million copies. And it didn't stop there. It spent more than 200 consecutive weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, ultimately moving over 4 million copies worldwide. His follow-up book, titled Become a Better You, was even more lucrative. Between advance money and royalties, it earned Joel an estimated $13 million. Since then, he's published over 15 books, at least 7 of which became New York Times bestsellers. And with each release came new merchandise, companion journals, daily devotionals, and promotional tours. Then there are the live events. His Night of Hope stadium tours draw crowds that rival music festivals. In March 2013, over 20,000 people packed Miami's American Airlines Arena just to hear him speak. Tickets weren't free. They cost around $15 each, and they sold out in cities across the US, Canada, and even the UK. In 2017 alone, Lakewood spent $6.7 million putting these events together. But the return? Let's just say, extremely massive. And don't forget the merch. From books to CDs, apparel to gift shop devotionals, Lakewood's physical and online stores rake in steady streams of income, often right outside the sanctuary doors. On social media, Joel is a juggernaut. Over 25 million followers on Facebook, around 10 million on Twitter, and over 3 million subscribers on YouTube. His brand is polished, controlled, and ever-present. To many, he's a spiritual guide. To others, he's something else entirely. A religious CEO in a $90 million a year empire built on hope, branding, and market-tested messaging. The fact is, two truths can coexist. So the real question is, which side are you on? Now, with an annual operating budget estimated at around $90 million, Lakewood Church isn't just big, it's massive. But where all that money actually goes has become one of the biggest controversies surrounding Joel Osteen's empire. Let's break it down ourselves. Roughly $31.7 million, which is about 35%, goes to weekly services. That includes staff, musicians, stage production, lighting, and audio/visual costs. Around $25 million is allocated to the church's media ministry. This includes the TV airtime, equipment, editing teams, and broadcasting infrastructure. Another $22 million or so goes to administration, marketing, fundraising efforts, and operations. While all of these are intriguing and mind-bending, did you know that only about $1.2 million, a little over 1.3% of the entire budget, is designated for missions and charitable outreach? For context, many nonprofit watchdogs suggest that a healthy charitable organization spend at least 15 to 25% of its budget on outreach or public services. At Lakewood, that number barely clears 1%, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. Adding to the suspicion is the fact that Joel Osteen Ministries currently has a Did Not Disclose rating from Give.org, the Better Business Bureau's charity division. That means the ministry declined to provide sufficient financial information for accountability standards. For an organization that takes in millions from donations, product sales, and media licensing, the silence raises questions. Then came the plot twist that no one saw coming. In 2021, a plumber renovating a Lakewood bathroom reportedly discovered over $600,000 in cash and checks hidden inside a wall.
Crazy story. Justin the plumber was the one who discovered the money in the wall at Lakewood Church.
The money was allegedly tied to a reported theft from 2014, though to this day, the circumstances around it remain murky and no arrests were made. The church said it had no further comment. That moment, a plumber pulling church donations out of drywall, symbolized everything critics had been saying for years, that the walls of Lakewood hold more secrets than they should. Joel, for his part, maintains that he hasn't taken a salary from the church since 2004. His personal wealth, estimated between $50 and $100 million, comes entirely, he says, from book royalties and speaking engagements. But for many, the question isn't whether Joel is technically breaking any rules. It's whether a ministry that preaches generosity should be spending like a brand and giving like a ghost. For years, Joel Osteen stood as a symbol of effortless optimism. But when real-life tragedy hit, the glossy surface of his ministry began to show its cracks. And each crisis that followed peeled back a little more of that polished image. In 2020, as businesses across America shut their doors due to the deadly pandemic, the federal government launched the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, a loan system designed to keep small businesses and nonprofits afloat. Interestingly, Lakewood Church applied and received a staggering $4.4 million in funds. The moment the news leaked, the backlash was swift. People questioned why a church with close to a 9-figure budget and a pastor worth tens of millions would need relief funds meant for struggling small businesses. Under mounting pressure, Lakewood returned the money, but the damage was done. For critics, it wasn't about legality, it was about optics. And the optics were awful. But you've got to know, this isn't the first time Lakewood has done something that makes you wonder what values they hold dear. Back in August 2017, when Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston, streets became rivers.
And this just gets deeper as you go further down. I want to go ahead and point out, you can see that speed limit sign.
Thousands lost their homes. Lakewood Church, dry and elevated and capable of holding over 16,000 people, seemed like the perfect shelter. But nope, it stayed closed. When people asked why, Lakewood posted that the building was inaccessible due to flooding. But photos and videos taken by locals told a different story. The roads were clear, the entrances dry. Social media exploded with the hashtag #OpenLakewoodChurch, and Joel Osteen became a viral punching bag. The church eventually opened its doors, but the delay left a permanent mark. Even celebrities joined in the backlash, asking how a church with so many resources could remain locked in a crisis. Then came the darkest moment of all. On February 11, 2024, a woman named Janice Yvonne Moreno entered Lakewood Church with an AR-15 and her 7-year-old son. She opened fire, injuring a volunteer and causing chaos. Police returned fire, killing her.
36-year-old Genesee Moreno walked into the megachurch with a loaded rifle with her young son.
But her son, Samuel, was critically injured in the process. Investigations later revealed that Moreno had a long history of mental illness and troubling behavior.
Genesee Yvonne Moreno, she had been born a man, Jeffrey Escalante, from El Salvador.
Alarmingly, her former in-laws had allegedly warned both the church and authorities about her before the attack. The Houston Chronicle later reported that over 100 red flags and intervention points were missed leading up to the shooting. Lakewood's security presence was questioned. How could someone walk into a building that size with 2 rifles and a backpack without being stopped at the door? In moments like these, the mood shifted. Joel's sermons about favor and breakthrough suddenly felt out of step. When real tragedy struck, people didn't want motivational slogans. They wanted answers. And for many, Lakewood gave too few. One thing a lot of people don't know is that, in many ways, Joel Osteen's empire is a family business. And while Joel is the face of Lakewood, his success has been anything but a solo act. Joel met his future wife, Victoria Iloff.
We have the greatest people out there who come up to us and tell us their stories.
A young psychology student who was working at her mom's shop in 1985. 2 years later, they were married. Victoria would become more than a pastor's wife. She grew into a spiritual figure in her own right. Co-pastor, speaker, best-selling author, and founder of Lakewood's women's ministry, which today reaches tens of thousands annually. Her book, Love Your Life, debuted at number 2 on the New York Times list in 2008, moving over 750,000 copies in its first print run. She's not just Joel's partner, she's part of the brand. Their 2 children, Jonathan and Alexandra, were raised in the media machine of Lakewood. By their teens, they were already performing worship music on stage in front of 40,000 people. Alexandra's voice became a staple of Lakewood's worship band, while Jonathan studied radio, television, and film, just like his dad. In 2019, Jonathan preached his first sermon on Father's Day, and many saw it as a symbolic baton pass. But whether either child truly wants to inherit the pulpit, or whether the next generation of believers will even be watching, is still up in the air. For now, the Osteen family stands as a picture of unity, style, and purpose. But behind the staged perfection lies a deeper question. Is this a ministry or a brand run like a dynasty? We'll leave you to answer that. For decades, Joel Osteen's message of self-belief and divine favor played like a greatest hits album, uplifting, repeatable, and easy to digest. But now, there's a different tune playing among younger audiences, and they're turning down the volume. According to data from Pew and Barna, only 16% of millennials and just 15% of Gen Z attend church regularly. Those numbers are the lowest in U.S. history. And while older generations still pack arenas for events like Night of Hope, younger audiences are looking for something else entirely: authenticity, community impact, and spiritual depth. Many Gen Zers say they're tired of slick stage lights and Instagrammable sermons. They want hard answers about injustice, mental health, and the complexity of faith in a broken world. And for some, Joel's carefully packaged positivity feels like it skips over the struggle. Critics argue that the message, "Think good thoughts and good things will come," doesn't speak to those battling anxiety, debt, or deep spiritual questions. The backlash isn't just happening in surveys, it's happening on social media. In the wake of Hurricane Beryl, TikTok lit up with sarcastic remakes of the Hurricane Harvey scandal, showing dry streets and captioning them, "Joel Osteen probably locked the doors again." These aren't just jokes. They're digital critiques from a generation that demands transparency, not stagecraft. So while Joel's smile still fills arenas, the future looks less certain, because a growing number of young adults aren't just skipping church. They're asking if churches like Lakewood were ever really built for them in the first place. On paper, everything about Lakewood is a success story. Officially, Joel Osteen hasn't taken a dime from the church since 2004. And technically, it's true. But critics argue that the distinction between church money and personal wealth is blurrier than it seems. After all, Lakewood covers his travel, his events, his production staff, and much of the infrastructure that powers the Joel Osteen brand. His platform exists because the church funds the engine behind it. And while Joel insists that his success is proof of God's favor, others aren't buying it. One viral Reddit comment summed up the mood of many disillusioned former followers. "He's not a preacher. He's Tony Robbins with a Bible verse." It's not just the money, it's what the money represents. A pastor in a $10.5 million mansion, flying city to preach about blessings, feels out of touch in an era where people are struggling to pay rent. When critics dug into the church's financials and found that less than 2% of the budget went to actual charity, it didn't help either. And yet, Joel keeps smiling, keeps saying, "Don't let critics distract you from your calling," keeps publishing books about breakthroughs and promotions. But beneath the surface, there's a growing unease, because more and more people are starting to ask, is this really a movement of faith? Or is it just a well-oiled machine running on branding, book sales, and bulletproof PR? And honestly, if we are keeping it real, those questions are valid. For years, Joel Osteen's message has been wrapped in the language of destiny. Bigger blessings, greater favor, a brighter tomorrow. But now, that message faces a test even Joel might not have foreseen. Attendance at Lakewood has stabilized, but it's no longer growing the way it once did. Streaming numbers are steady, but they don't carry the same momentum they had a decade ago. And while Joel's smile remains unchanged, the culture around him has shifted. Younger generations are less interested in naming and claiming blessings. They want churches that serve, confront injustice, and wrestle with real-world struggles. They want transparency. They want the truth. Meanwhile, watchdog groups are pushing for more accountability. There's talk in D.C. about closing the IRS loophole that allows megachurches to operate with virtually no financial transparency. Joel Osteen's ministry is among the highest-profile examples in those conversations. There's no official scandal, no criminal charges, but there's a growing discomfort, an awareness that Lakewood's greatest challenge might not come from outside critics or government scrutiny, but from the very people it once captivated, the ones who used to listen, and now simply don't. So, what do you think? Is Joel Osteen still a beacon of hope in a weary world? Or has the brand outgrown the belief? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories that peel back the curtain, subscribe. We're just getting started.